Welcome back to Outdoors with Larry Ray on ESPN 790 AM.
Brought to you proudly by Sportsman's Warehouse, Counts Marine, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, and Avery Superstore.
Good Saturday morning and welcome back to Outdoors with Larry Ray on ESPN 790, where we bring you, the listener, the best in outdoor radio. And here he is, the host with the most, Larry Ray.
All right, yeah. Not sure how much most.
Dr. Larry Ray.
Yeah, Dr.
Dr. Larry, not a real doctor.
No, not a real doctor. And then I'm not sure what I've got the most of, but I've got a lot of it, whatever it might be, But, hey, we're going to talk a little bit on this segment. We got Ron Wong up in Paris, Tennessee. We got John Gordon and Andy Tweed in the studio. We're going to keep Andy for this segment because we want to continue our conversation with Andy, but first of all, I want to, in this portion, our condolences go out to Gene Smith and his family in the loss of his wife, Vicki. They formed an amazing hunter education team for many, many years, and Vicki has been ill for a long time now, and so our condolences go out to Gene. He will be in studio next week for our fifth Saturday. He wants to be busy, and I told Andy Tweed, one of Gene's best friends, to keep him busy. Don't bring too many chicken casseroles, but you can bring that to here sometime. Because I've heard wonderful things about Andy's chicken casserole, and I've always wondered. I'm not sure where he gets his chickens, but I mean, because he's out in the woods a lot, So, and he's told us the BB gun story about. He told us another story about him being a paper boy. But Andy, you said that, and we're going to talk with all the guys during this time. But you as we come into the 4th of July weekend, and there's so many. There's more kayaks and canoes. We've talked about this, and we're going to get Eric Jackson back on the show. We thought we had him today, but he's at the tournament this weekend, FLW. We'll get Eric Jackson, as Ron has written so much, a good story coming out in the July issue of the Mid-South Hunting and Fishing Magazine about the Pan American Black Bass Championships. But talk a little bit in your career, this incident that you talked about on the Wolf River doesn't really surprise you, does it now?
No, it really doesn't. This, to recap, basically we had two young folks over 19, 20 years old, not very familiar with kayaking and the rules and regulations that go with that. But they capsized their boat and spent a considerable amount of time in the water on the Wolf River waiting on somebody to come rescue them, and naturally being bled to death by the small mosquito population.
The small, yeah.
Anyway, but this, the kayaking is reminding me, as we talked earlier, is really almost equivalent to what the jet skis were to the boating industry in the 90s.
Yeah.
And people for a long time, or the first several years, did not understand when you lit off the throttle on a jet ski, you have no steering at that point.
Yeah.
So everybody on the jet ski that was not on top of their A game was either running into another boat or into the bank or a tree or a dock or whatever. So we had numerous fatalities and so on and so forth, and we could go on forever about that. But now here the millennials are coming out, and they're thinking, boy, I need to do something other than look at my iPad and my iPhone.
So let's go get a kayak.
Yeah, let's go buy a kayak because they're so cheap to get.
Yeah.
You go to buy a speedboat, you're looking at, or a bass boat or whatever, you're going to drop $100,000.
Or you can go to Counts Marine and get a better deal than that. But go ahead.
Okay,
I just want to make sure my friends at Counts Marine know that we're not telling you not to buy a boat. But the kayak, even if you go to S.Y. Wilson, where Primary Tackle is now located, they've got kayaks out there.
Everybody's selling them.
It's the fastest growing, and Ron knows this from covering that big event in Cookeville. Andy, they're everywhere.
They are. And I'm seeing them in the back of pickup trucks and on top of little SUVs everywhere. I see them all around town all the time. And they're, like I said, they're fairly inexpensive. And it's, kayaking is fun. It's a lot of fun.
But you got to be able to know where you are. You got to be able to know the dangers. And if you don't know your area, I mean, I've seen people on the Wolf River, the Ghost River part, you take in there, you better know that area.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you might not find your way out. So you can go to a store, buy you a kayak Saturday morning, and be in the water Saturday afternoon.
That's exactly right.
Is that not crazy? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
sure enough,
it's the only vessel I know that you really don't have to practice. I mean, you just
get in and go. But people are not versed enough if they get into what I call a slack water environment, and they are semi-tippy. It depends on the size and the weight of the person and how tall they are, short, and all this.
The Buffalo River is a little bit different than the Wolf River. Okay, I know that. I've had a couple of accidents on the Buffalo in Arkansas when the water got you. And I will say that even the weather could make a big difference in when you put in and when you put out. I don't know how long those folks thought they were going to be in the water. I don't know how long they knew where they were supposed to be, if they had a map, or if they had anything.
They didn't have any of that. All they had was one cell phone that worked. The other one went into the drink.
Really?
And luckily they were able to call somebody. Just think if they hadn't called anybody.
Oh.
Eventually they would have had to gotten themselves out of there. And with the topography and the critters that live around there, there's a plethora of cottonmouths, copperheads, and there Sunday morning when I went to retrieve their kayak, there was a small alligator in some impounded water. Not that alligators chase people down. I mean, that's
really
nothing to worry about.
No.
But we do have alligators in Shelby County. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We've had them here a long time. But I've never seen anybody getting eaten by one. I've been here 26 years, but I'm scared. I'm more scared of humans than I am the critters.
And I know that Ron has always talked about this. Ron is let people know where you're going.
Absolutely.
And you said that, Ron, before, just that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the biggest proponent of practicing good water safety.
I know you are. Yeah.
And not only wearing PFDs, but especially when you go out. You need to and you're in a kayak or anything like that, let someone know where you're at and when you are expected to be back home.
So these guys must have not, they didn't know what they were doing.
No, they put in too late in the day. They figured, okay, this trip they probably looked at it on their Google Maps or something.
Said it's only a couple of miles.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's about 4 or 5 miles.
Yeah.
We go 2 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour. Okay, yeah, we'll be there in about 3 hours. So they tip over at 7:30. They still had they were basically halfway to Houston Levee Road. They had another good they would have been 9:30 by the time they would have pulled their kayak with no problems.
So we're talking about an area of the Wolf River that is shallow, with rapids and things along that line, and we don't think of it as it empties into the Mississippi or where it starts in Mississippi and those things. But this is you've had this is not the first time you've been on a rescue mission.
No,
Andy.
this is not the first time. Our rivers, the two main rivers across the county, run east-west. Naturally, the Mississippi River runs north to south.
Right. Yeah.
But so when you have a large storm in eastern Shelby, and it moves east or east-northeast, as a lot of them do.
Yeah.
And you get those, say, 4, 5, 6, 7-inch rains, which we do
in an hour.
Every other year, we get those.
Yeah.
And anyway, if you look how the Wolf, half of the Wolf River's been dredged out, and then the majority of the Loosathatchee's been dredged out all the way down to behind the DuPont plant at 51.
Yeah.
So there's only one curve in the Loosathatchee River in the whole county until you get to Highway 51. So that amount of water going down it's just basically a large ditch.
Yeah.
That water rises really rapidly. I was checking duck hunters one afternoon trying to catch them shoot late, and I had to cross a ditch which was about 2.5 feet deep. Not bad. Crossed it, but it was it was probably a 15-foot ravine, but it only had 2 feet of water in it.
Yeah.
For me to get on the backside of this particular swamp. Well, we had about a 3-inch rain in Fayette County, and I didn't pay attention to the weather, and the guys were in duck hunting. I took care of business on the way back. Guess what? 15-foot ravine was 15 feet deep.
Oh, my.
So I had to swim. Well, I got
raging water.
Yeah, and I've got a four-wheeler sitting on the other side that's getting ready to get swept away. So
Yeah.
I had to swim this little ditch and made it and got in four-wheeler and drove on. But,
Wow.
you got to pay attention to that. But back in 2012, we had one of those 7+ inch rains that hit the edge of Shelby and Fayette County and then went on.
Yeah.
And the Looshatchee River was roaring, and I have no idea why. I guess just because they were kids. It was two 16-year-old kids from Bolton High School put a John boat in with a trolling motor, and one paddle and a trolling motor. They'd gone to Bass Pro earlier that day and bought a bunch of new lures and a rod and the whole deal. And of course, you'll know when you've got a raging river like that, it's muddy and hard. I mean, you're not going to catch anything, but they put their boat in. They weren't gone. Oh, man, they weren't gone 5 minutes, and they flipped that boat over.
They flipped the boat over. So they crawled out, but the river was so high they were able to crawl right out on the bank. I mean, the water was bank full. Wow.
So they get out, their boat goes down. Well, they tried to walk out. Well, there's a gigantic swamp. Now, this is in June, maybe. This is, May or June when we get those big, heavy rains.
Yeah.
So they go to a swamp. They know that the water was over their heads. They didn't want to go out that way. So they go back to the river. Now the river's starting to drop. Now it's dark. Then, of course, the parents get worried, find the truck, know that they were going fishing.
Yeah.
Anyway, called Shelby County. They put their boat in. They actually found their boat wrapped around a tree, completely wrapped around a tree, down by the DuPont plant at 51.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I was actually going out to get some paperwork one morning and the county radio was on in my state truck. This is just how it worked out. And went out there. I heard on the radio, we found the boat, but we don't have any of the people. So I called the department. Long story short, got to all the info. I grabbed my kayak, went straight there, threw my kayak in the water, and the river was dropping like a rock. I knew you would not be able to navigate it in a boat within hours. So I got in, went down, and sure enough, I found a fishing lure hung in a tree. I said, well, this is where the boat capsized. I went another 200 yards, and there those guys were. I could hear them talking.
So they were up in there.
They were up in there, and they had spent the night, and I was actually looking for a dead body.
Yeah.
So
they made it.
They made it, and I got them to get down to me. They slid down, but now the river had dropped 25 feet.
Yeah.
And it's all the way down. So they had to slide down a big mud thing and hang on to my boat.
They didn't care.
No, they didn't care.
They were just wanting to
They
get
hung
home.
onto my kayak. I called the sheriff's department and said, I found them. They're alive. Get a John boat, get down here and get them. And they got them, and that's the end of the story.
Andy, you need to write you a book. I don't know what you'd call it, but come up with some kind of name.
Buffoonery and hijinks in Shelby County.
That might not be too bad. All right, let's take a break. Going to come back. Hard to believe. We've only got one segment to go. We'll be right back on Outdoors with Larry Ray.